We're really excited about this topic and showing you some of the differences and how Intacct addresses a lot of the pain points in Sage 100. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Frank Cuccio, and I am the ERP account executive here at BrainSell. And with me today is my colleague and Sage 100 and Sage Intacct engineer, Adrian Goddard.
Hi, nice to be here.
All right, so we'll start with a couple of housekeeping items. This will be about a 25-minute presentation with question and answer at the end. Please drop any of your questions in the question box and we'll try to answer them throughout. And if we don't get to your question, we'll make sure to follow up with you afterwards. Finally, this presentation is being recorded and the recording will be sent out tomorrow. Feel free to pass it along to any colleagues who may not have been able to join. Yeah, thanks. All right, we can jump in now. So we're going to be focusing on some of the pain points that we hear from a lot of our customers who are on Sage 100. So first, with Sage 100, every year they release a new version of the software, but in order to upgrade, you need to hire somebody like us to go into the system and make those changes and do the upgrade for you. And as you probably know, that can get a little costly. A lot of people, they don't upgrade every year, so they don't get access to the features. Try to recommend that you do stay upgraded every year, but we know how things go. Sage Intacct, you get to upgrade every quarter automatically, and it gets pushed out. You don't have to do anything, and you just show up on Monday morning, and it's in there. Intacct was born in the cloud. Intacct stands for Internet Accounting, and it designed from the ground up to be a cloud-based application. One of the things that Intacct is really well known for is the dashboards and reports. Most people in Sage 100 are going to be used to crystal reports and exporting data into Excel to manipulate it and format it the way they want. In Intacct, you'll see during the demo, we've got some really powerful reporting features. And then lastly, Intacct has multi-entity capabilities. So if you have a multi-entity company and you're on Sage 100, you're probably used to having to log in and log out, switch between company files. And we know that can be a headache, and Intacct gets rid of that. You have one system, never log in, never log out, to switch between them. All right, so before we get into the demo, I did want to talk about one of our customers who made the switch from Sage 100 to Sage Intacct. So some of the pain points and challenges that they were seeing on Sage 100, like I had mentioned on the last slide, they had 10 entities or companies in Sage 100. So that was holding them back. They had to switch in and out, and consolidations were a challenge. The team spent more than 15 calendar days closing the books each month. Bank reconciliation was manual and labor intensive, and the reporting lacked the holistic view of the finances, because creating consolidated statements, maybe you can do it, but a lot of times it's nearly impossible. And then the manual AP process, it just really kept everybody frustrated. So then we moved them over to Intacct, and they were able to have one central general ledger system to see everything all in one place. So all 10 companies within the same system. The reporting was super robust, and they could group companies, they could consolidate, they could report on one or the other. the bank reconciliation process using the Intacct bank feeds. It brings their transactions in automatically, uses AI to do matching. And they were able to automate a lot of their internal processes using Intacct's native workflow capabilities. And then lastly, there's an active ISV marketplace. So these are the integrations to other software systems that you can connect to Intacct. Intacct's got open APIs that are well documented. So as long as you can connect into the APIs and your other system is able to connect and has open APIs, building an integration, if it doesn't exist already, you can build it. It's simple, straightforward. All right.
Okay, thanks, Frank. Again, my name is Adrienne Goddard, and I've been a Sage 100 consultant for over 30 years, and I've been working with Sage Intacct for the last 5 years. And my specialty is actually transferring clients from Sage 100 to Intacct. Because I know both products and I try to make that transition seamless. So let's take it, let me share my screen, and we're going to take a look at, see, we're going to take a look at the product. I'm not going to give you a full demo. I'm just going to give you, just point out some differences between the two products. Okay, you can see my screen, Frank?
Yeah, maybe we could zoom in just a hair. No, you know what? I realize I'm zoomed out. That's the problem. You're good.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is the screen that you're going to see when you first log into Intacct. Okay, so you see your company over here. You've got you can see a user. You can see you can get to some help and support. The help system is fantastic on Intacct. You can either get help on a particular screen, or you can get you can type into the help and it'll bring your question right up. And it's also updated constantly. Whenever there's a new update, the help is modified, and it keeps it up to date and makes it really nice for users. And then down here, some additional help where you can get some training and video library and join some communities. And one thing that's right here in the middle of the screen where it talks about a release. So Frank had mentioned this, that Intacct releases an update every quarter. And then it tells you before it's released, it tells you when it's going to be. It's always late on a Friday night, so it happens over the weekend. And you can even watch a video, gives you all the notes. And then this particular, we just had a release, and so that's why it's saying release 4 is here. So that's fantastic. And then a big difference between Intacct and Sage 100 is Sage 100, you have multiple companies. Of course, you can have multiple companies, but you have to log in and out of each company. And each company has its own set of chart of accounts, and it has its own customers, own vendors. And so if you have to add an account number, it makes it very cumbersome because you have to go into each company and add that GL account number or add that vendor. But in Intacct, we have something that you can see. I'm at this top level, so I'm kind of at an overview level, and I can select here, and here's all the companies that are associated with this top level. And so these are, we call them entities in Intacct. And so I can still go into each entity, or I can stay at the top level. And what's great about this is that I can have a shared chart of accounts, shared vendors, shared customers, shared items. So if I'm adding a GL account number, I'm just adding it one time. instead of having to go into each company. And what this allows me to do is do consolidation and be able to see multiple companies all at the same time. But you might have some restrictions. If you have a restriction where maybe this customer is only for this one entity or one company, I can go ahead and set it up that way, or I can set up the restrictions. But having this, being able to access just one set of chart of accounts and one set of customers makes it really, really easy. And the other thing it allows you to do is consolidations. So I can consolidate all of the companies in one report. I can even create groups of companies to consolidate. And that just makes your reporting very robust and very, just at a glance, instead of having to export to Excel. Okay, so let me show you some of the menus. This is kind of similar to Sage 100, where you've got the applications over here, and I can switch very easily from accounts payable to accounts receivable. The organization is very nice. You've got usually an all tab and a setup tab, and the reporting is always in this this third column. And that's very nice because you're not having to go from, you're not having to scroll down at all. You can see all your options off of one screen. So let's come over here. I'm gonna, let's see. I want to show you, I'm gonna come in here and pull up the GL accounts and show you a typical screen. So you've got accounts here. I might be pulling up vendors and customers, this applies. And in Sage 100, you also have this type of screen here, right? You might have, you pull up a list view, you have various columns here. I can, let me see if sorry about that. Just minimize my screen here, sorry about that. So I have various columns here. I can quickly select the column and it will sort by that column. I can type in something like, if there's a wild card, and I can type in rent and very easily find that account number. And you can do the same thing again if it's vendors or customers. And once I can also use these list views as I can set up my own list view. I can change the columns around, filter them, and use it as a kind of a mini reporting system. I can export this to Excel if I want to. And then I want you to notice something about these account numbers here, is that you can see that the account number is just the main account number. So in Sage 100, you have usually the main account and then two other segments. And then you're kind of stuck with those segments. So if there's anything else that you want to track, it's kind of difficult to do unless it fits within the constraints of having those three segments. Where Intacct, the chart of accounts is very lean. You can see it, I only have 184 GL account numbers. But let me show you what you can do. This is called, if I come in here and I look at one of these account numbers, I can see that it'll here's the account number, but down here we have something called dimensions. And I want you to think about a dimension as being kind of a tag. So Sage Intacct comes with 9 dimensions, and here they are right here. There's some additional dimensions listed here because they might be additional modules, but just standard, you have department and location, customer, vendor, employee, item, class, which is a user definable. So maybe you put in here like job or something else that you might be wanting to track. And so by using the dimensions in reporting, so I can pull those dimensions either on a financial report or a custom report, and so it really makes my the reporting quite robust, or just being able to find an entry and go, oh, I know I did this entry to a vendor, so let me pull in that dimension. It makes it really easy to find. Okay, now the next thing I'd like to show you is a typical report. So we're going to go into the general ledger and pull up the detail report. Okay, so again, typical report, I'm going to show you some options. So this is on the general ledger detail report, but it would apply to other reports like the trial balance report, the AP aging, AR aging. You'll have similar type of features. So I can go ahead and put in a date here. Okay, and I have various books. You can define user books. I can put in an account number, a range of account numbers, but here's a feature that might interest you. I can also say select accounts, and I can type in, it's very easy in Intacct. I don't have to know the account number. I can type in maybe just a couple of letters for travel, for example, and I can hit travel. I can come in here to marketing, put marketing. So these two accounts are not in a row. They're just simply two accounts that I want to do some sort of analysis on. I can come down here. I love this one. These are various filters. See all the filters? These are all the different dimensions. Location is one of my, oh, go ahead.
So Adrian, I just wanted to pause for a second. So we just talked about the chart of accounts and kind of how the dimensions work. And this is really why we use dimensions, because now we can filter on everything. And coming from Sage 100, you know how hard it would be to break your reports down based on any of these things like location or customer, vendor. Anyways.
Right. especially on a GL report. You can't
Right.
just pick and choose. So if I'm using this location, this is a filter. So if I look at the location filter, this is really fabulous that I can, so notice, so this location, think of that as a company. So again, this is how many companies this particular one has, right? But if I look at location, you're seeing so many more. And that's because I could have one company with multiple locations. And so I could report down to just a specific location belonging to that company, or I can group my locations together. And so, and this also applies, I'm looking at a GL detail report, but this applies to financial statements. And I'm going to show you some examples of how you can group those together. But I'm going to go ahead and look at just the US locations. Okay, so mind you, that's going to be USA 1, USA 2, and a holding company. So three of my 8 or whatever companies together. And then I can come down here. I can choose on a report what dimensions I want to see. I'm only seeing 4 dimensions, but I can choose any dimension that I would like to see on a report. I can click on view. This is a notice just saying that this report might take a while depending on what I'm looking at. And here we go. So on a detail report, I'm looking at 2 different accounts, but I'm also seeing 3 different companies on the same report. Okay, I'm seeing a department, these are dimensions. I'm seeing customers, if it's applicable, vendor, and employee. And again, this is a typical report. You can do this with all reports where I could, if I click on customize, I can go right back to that screen and maybe add a 3rd account. So that's what the customize is for. I can print this report. I can store it for maybe other people want to, if I'm doing like month-end reports, and you can go to one section, all your stored reports would be there. I can email it. I can add it to a dashboard, which we're definitely going to talk about this later. And I can also export it, because you might I know we don't want you to have to use Excel, but of course, anything can be exported to Excel. And then a fabulous feature that you can do at this point is anything that's in blue, that means I can drill down to the source document. So let's take a look at this one invoice. It's a Google invoice. You can see the journal. It's coming from the accounts payable journal. I can click on it and it's going to bring up the journal entry first, right? So you can see, okay, it hit accounts payable, it hit marketing. Then I can also click here and it's going to drill right down to here's like the document header, right? I can see the status, it's posted. This invoice was not paid yet. I can actually pay it from the screen if I want to. I can pull up the invoice, and this is we call it a bill in Intacct or a vendor invoice. You can see all the information about it. Oh, it's got an attachment here. This is a great feature where I can have multiple attachments to it could be to a journal entry, it could be to an order entry or an AR invoice, or in this case, an AP invoice. And I can click on that attachment, and it might be the backup to a journal entry or the backup to this particular invoice. And then here is a great feature. If I'm going to go ahead and click on this link. In Sage 100, if an invoice or a journal entry or an AR invoice has been posted or updated, then in order to edit that invoice, I have to do some sort of an adjustment or a credit memo or debit memo. So it's additional steps. But in this case, I can pull this up, and if I have the rights to do so, so only if you have the rights, this is a vendor invoice. It has not been paid yet. So if it's been paid, then of course I'd have to adjust that payment or void the payment. And it's also the period is still open. If the period was closed, of course, I wouldn't be able to do this, but I'm a supervisor, so I can actually pull up the invoice. I can edit the invoice and make any modifications that I need to, and then go ahead and post the transaction. And so this is a fantastic feature. It saves a lot of time. And I'd also like to make another comment about posting in general. So you're seeing that I have this post button. In Sage 100, it works by batches. And you have to, one user enters a batch of invoices or whatever they're entering. It might be AP or AR. And then they are printing some sort of register, checking that register. If everything looks okay, then you're updating that register. Then you're printing a daily transaction register, and then you're viewing it and then posting that. Where in Intacct, it doesn't work that way. You enter the bill, and then I can either hit post, but I can also put it into a draft mode, or I can post it and it goes to a supervisor to do some sort of approval. So Intacct has built-in approvals. And this is so much easier than being on top of the other users. Like if you're trying to update and another user is trying to update, and you have to wait for each other. By posting transaction by transaction, it really speeds things up, and then everything is available for reporting immediately. You're not having to wait for somebody to do that update. And
we have a question
sure,
about the batch processing. So it says typically the batch processing is used to provide a good traceability for audit purposes. So their question is, if we're doing individual post by post, how do we kind of make up for that?
Okay.
So
you can there is a separate log that you can print. So you can come over here to more actions, and there is an audit. You can view the audit trail. But an easy way too is if you're in a particular invoice, I can come over here to history, and it shows all the information right here, like who created it, when was that, if there's any kind of modification, who that user was, and that modified date. So this is kind of a summary, but there also is an additional log. Yeah, it's a really, really good question. Okay.
There's another question about, and this may just be specific to them, but they wanted to know, it says, for when they pay a bill with a credit card, the payee shows up in Sage 100 as the bank's name, and they're wondering if in Intacct you can have the vendor name show up on a credit card payment.
The vendor name instead of the vendor ID?
No, because when they pay with a credit card in Sage 100, it says their bank's name on it.
Yes, there is. I won't review that today, but there is
just a yes or no.
Yes, there is a way to do that so that you have the bank and the exact vendor. I know that is a really yeah, that's kind of difficult to do it in Sage 100. So yes, you can do it.
Cool.
Okay, so now the next thing I would like to show you is we're going to talk about dashboards. And I actually have it, I cheated and I put it in this other tab. Intacct allows you to open up multiple tabs. So if you're switching back and forth, it's a big time saver. So I put this dashboard on this other tab. And a dashboard, it looks good. That's why I want to show it to you. And it also shows many different things about what Intacct can do, but it's very useful. So instead of going to that home screen, you can set up dashboards for each different type of employee that you have. So you can kind of see right here, I'm looking at the controller dashboard, but you can set up many, many different kinds. So maybe for the CFO or for the AP manager or for most employees, they can set up their own dashboard. And so whatever that person is doing, like on a daily basis or a weekly basis that you want to get to very quickly, instead of having to open up those tasks and open up those reports. So this dashboard shows these metrics or these cards up at the top, and you can choose whichever ones that are important to that particular user. You can see that, again, this is a controller, so I might see what modules and what process I'm in, during the closing. I've got some sort of checklists that are important, all different kind of reports. So you can see, here's a great example. This is actually a custom report that's been created and not a standard report. And I want to point out that Intacct has built in, so the financial report writer and the custom report writer, and there's two versions of it. There's a normal custom report writer and an interactive custom report writer. And all three are built into the product. They are not separate products. So I know in Sage 100, we have Crystal Reports, which is a separate product, but it's the integration is pretty nice. But the problem with Crystal Reports, and like I said, I love it, but it's difficult for just your average user to create a report using Crystal. You really have to be familiar with the product to create the report, where in Intacct, we have these products already built into the system. You're not having to go outside. And I know for the same thing with the financial report writer in Sage 100, it's very, very old. Most people don't use it. Most people use either the standard reports in Sage 100 or they use an outside product. So I'm going to show you a couple of, here, let's look at the right side real quick just so you can see, yes, it does fancy graphs. You can do a line graph, you can do a bar graph, pie charts, and this down here is basically all the approvals. You can do approved journal entries, like if it's a controller, their journal entries or payments will automatically pop up right on the screen, makes it easy. So, and then I'd like to review just 3 financial reports inside of Intacct. So this first one is it's actually a standard, it's a report that came standard with the product, but then I just made a few modifications to it. So I love that you can take the out of the box financial statements and maybe just change a few things about them, to suit your needs. So what I did with this report is I added this column right here that shows the percentage of revenue. So you can see, you can do calculation on any of the columns. And then just to, just for show, I put, you can take whatever a threshold that you might want to highlight. So when it doesn't meet that threshold, then you can see the orange coming in here, or these are negative. So say, okay, if you see a negative value, then make those red so it stands out. And then something fun down here is, see this hours worked? This is non-financial data. So there's something called statistical accounts. So that means I could add non-financial data to my financial statements and report on it. I can run calculations from it. And this is a great feature. So that means I'm not exporting my financial statement to Excel, adding these other things that you might want to show on the statement, and then producing the report out of Excel. And then if you have one little journal entry to change, then you have to repeat that whole process. You can do the statement in Intacct real time. And then down here is an expense report. And what's kind of cool about this is if you notice that the rows are very similar to your regular P&L, except for just showing expenses. But the columns are actually dimensions. So in this case, they're departments. So I'm saying exactly, instead of saying all departments rolled together, I want to see them in separate columns so I can really take a look at each department. And these going across, they could be any of the dimensions that we talked about. They can be various jobs going across. They could be locations. This is a really powerful tool. And you can even have the dimensions, instead of being columns, you can have them be rows. So it's very robust, lots of features. And then the last report that I want to point out is really, this is something that my clients in Sage 100, we just simply can't do. We cannot do consolidated companies, right? You can go into each company and print out a financial statement, but I can't show a P&L with each company as separate columns. That we can't do. And so I have one client that's just right now, we're working on a moving from Sage 100 to Intacct. And this is really what sold them, is because it was taking them a very, very long time of exporting all of their data and then combining it in Excel to create this report. So this is a great, great feature. Okay. Oh, go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure we pointed something out because I know we're getting into about that time. But can we show what's my favorite feature on the dashboard is the filtering, because I just love to see, especially those performance cards at the top, if we're looking at the top level versus one company versus the other.
Yes, yes, that's such a good feature. So up at the top, what Frank is talking about is I can filter up here. And I just have 2 filter boxes. You can add many, many more filter boxes up here. But so you can change your date, and all of the data will change according to that date. Or in this case, I can actually change my filtering of the location. Oops, so I can come here, and let's say I just want to put USA 1, for example, instead of my grouping that I have for all USA locations. So if I click on USA 1, hit apply, then all of these reports, whatever I have on my dashboard, will just filter according to that dimension. And again, it could be a specific department or vendor or whatever the dimension that I'm using. So you probably didn't memorize any of the numbers here, although see my intercompany revenue went to 0. But if you come down here to that report that I was showing you earlier that had all the companies going across, you can see now it's just USA 1.
Yeah, no, I just think that's pretty incredible because you set up your dashboard one time and then, you know, okay, I want to switch between them. I don't have to do anything besides hit apply.
That's right. It's amazing. So, I mean, I can show you a lot, many more features, but I think that's some key ones. And if you have any other questions.
That was awesome. All right, well, thank you, Adrian. That was a great demo. I think we saw a lot of, the possibilities for our folks that are on 100. If any of these things are resonating with you, definitely reach out and we can schedule a discovery call so we can learn a little bit more about, your particular pains. But we did have a couple of questions that came in that I didn't get to. So the first one was, how long does it take to implement? It's always a good question. And of course, the answer is it depends. And I think the factors that it depends on are, how many, are you doing like the standard core financials, or do you have tons of add-ons? Are you doing project accounting? Do you have inventory? Those things will add some time. And, a lot, we like to say it's about 90 days to implement. But Adrian, what do we usually see? What slows down our implementations?
Probably the number one is that employees have their day jobs.
Right,
And
they got
so,
stuff to do, so they can't meet with us every day.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest part.
Cool. And then second question is, how do we get all of our data into the new system? So I think they mean like all their historic data from Sage 100 into Sage Intacct.
Sage, let's see, I can actually, well, I won't show you, but there's a procedure of you can export templates. So templates for vendors and for customers, and whether you want to put your GL in by month or by year or all the detailed transactions, they provide a template. And it's in Excel, so that makes it really easy. And it has the header information, and then you just have to load that information. That's one of the things that I help clients with. I assist with doing it together in the beginning, and then I train the client how they can upload their data. But it's usually using a template, and it's an Excel spreadsheet. So it makes it very easy for the user to do it themselves eventually.
Right, and I would like to point out that best practices for what we do, we try to limit the number of years of data that we bring in. After you stop paying your Sage 100 bill, you can still view it. So you don't necessarily, it makes it expensive if you want to bring in 20 years worth of transaction level detail. Mm-hmm. Because think about it, your chart of accounts is completely different. So you'd have to go back and basically like recreate all those transactions, in retroactively. So we don't do that. It's usually 2 years, but we can do more if we need to. How difficult is it for the users to switch? Is there a learning curve? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, of course, there's a learning curve. The product is different, but I always think that once I know because I had to learn. I was so used to Sage 100, and then switching to Intacct, you still move once you know an accounting software package. They all the procedure is kind of the same. If you have to add a chart of accounts, you go to the general ledger. If you add a customer, you go to accounts receivable. So that procedure is the same, but the on-demand learning through Sage Intacct is fantastic. So I think you can talk to Frank, but you pay for one user, but all of your users will have access to the online training, and it's fabulous. So
Yeah,
I really don't think it's a difficult transition.
yeah, it's called the Sage Intacct Learning Membership, and yeah,
Mhm.
it's not even the price of one user, but you buy it and everybody has access to it. It's on demand, you know, video courses, and they even have some instructor-led courses as well. And some of those courses you can buy a la carte, but it makes no sense to do that because it's so cheap to get full access for everyone.
Right.
But yeah, thanks for answering the questions and for joining us today. If your question wasn't answered, we'll follow up with you. We really hope you learned a lot about, you know, how Intacct can address some of the challenges you might be facing. Um, but yeah, like I said earlier, if you're interested in kind of evaluating this a little bit more, please reach out to myself or sales@brainsell.com or your customer success manager, and you know, we'll schedule another discussion to get more information so that we can do a nice tailored demo uh, to really showcase, you know, solving your issues. Um, the recording will be sent out tomorrow, and again, please share with anyone that might learn something from this. So, thank you, Adrian. That was great.
Thank you.
And goodbye, everyone. Thanks.